Thanks, listeners, for joining us. Today's Elko Live here on KELK. We're featuring an important midweek discussion in response to something that's been emerging rather rapidly in the community that we thought it was really important to address, trying to get the facts and information out. Unfortunately, some things are running rampant on social media, so we brought in Matt McCarty, who is the president of the Elko County School Board of Trustees. Matt, we really appreciate your making time on very short notice to come in and address a topic today that's caused a lot of concern and misunderstanding in the community.
Lori, we appreciate the opportunity. I appreciate the opportunity because, yes, I do believe that almost everything that is going out on the social media is misunderstanding. They're not understanding how the policy was created, what the process of the policy was as far as getting it through in our timeline, and then also what the policy says. I understand completely that I can speak in a very political way. And I tried to post a thing on Facebook last night, and I am not a social media person. I tend to think that social media is more destructive than it is building up, and I want to have more positive influences in my life, and so I don't get onto social media all that often. But I did try to post something, and it was fairly late last night. I can be verbose because I try to make sure to cover as many options and actions, not actions, but different points of view as possible. So I know that sometimes comes out political, and today's political realm, it seems to be just a sound bite, and I don't do sound bites.
That's why we have a half an hour on the program. And Matt, I did want to make sure listeners understood that we did extend an invitation, and again, extremely short notice, just this morning, within a few hours ago, to at least one of the people who I don't know that she responded directly to your post, but who is very involved in this issue. And what we are talking about is this is a policy adopted by the school board during Tuesday's regular school board meeting. It was the second reading of a formal response in the event of the death of a student or staff at any of the school district schools. So very sensitive subject, one that there was considerable research that went into this, but again, there's at least one group concerned that it might not be sensitive enough, especially dealing with the topic of suicide, Matt, going forward. So we did invite the representative to come on. She is not available, and she did not say anything untoward. She simply said that she did not want to come, as it would seem that she was in support of the policy. She thinks that the policy needs some work, I think, as she put it. I could read my text directly, Matt. And that's the concern you're hearing too.
Yeah, absolutely. When I had reached out to her, she texted back and said thank you, but no. She appreciated the invitation. She said that she feels that the policy needs a lot of work, and I said, I'm not trying to push you by any means, but this is also an opportunity to let us know what your requests are, and in full transparency, because I believe, despite what some people are saying on social media, that our current school board has worked very diligently to be transparent. So in full transparency, she had asked me directly just a few hours before the meeting to table the agenda item because she wanted to visit with other people in her realm and wanted to come back with some suggested changes. And I told her, as president of the school board, no, I didn't feel comfortable doing that. If the full board wanted to do so, then I would certainly leave it up to the board. There is the opportunity and I guess the tradition that the chair of most bodies has the ability to control the agenda. And I could have certainly done that. I feel that control of the agenda should be done in a very limited manner. It should be done in a very conscientious manner, and there should be a really good reason as to why the board chair of any board is taking away power from the board of whatever it is that they're looking at. In this case, the Board of Trustees. I would be removing the power from the Board of Trustees, and I didn't feel that was appropriate. they can always table it on their own.
And that obviously was not the process during Tuesday's meeting. And so this was the second reading, too. This is important to note. So this was not the first time this appeared on the agenda. In fact, I was explaining, too, that I first read this new policy online attached to the board docs at the beginning of the month when it was first posted.
Yes. So one of the things that this board has done more than a year ago, we put into place a policy that said any changes to policy and any new policies need to come before the board a minimum of twice. The first time it comes up so that we as a board have the opportunity to look it over, the public has an opportunity to look it over. We then make suggestions back to staff, and the intent would be that staff then takes it back, makes the changes as appropriate, brings it back before the board, and hopefully all of those changes are done. We've had that opportunity for people to speak. If nobody speaks, then we can very quickly move it on and continue with our business. At Tuesday's meeting, as it happens, one of the things that I had also mentioned is that as board president, items that have come up for a second reading, I had intended on putting into the consent agenda. Any board member and any member of public can request it be removed from the consent agenda. This simply allows for the process of the meeting to move more smoothly. If we have 5 different policies up, instead of approving or making a motion to approve and then seconding and then having public comment and then everything else, and there is none, it's just a process and it goes very, very quickly to a degree. My thought is put in a consent agenda. There's not a need to discuss it unless somebody wants to and move forward. And this was because of that process. I'm sorry, that's where I started going. Because of that process that we put in place a year ago, this was first released, yes, at the beginning of February. Our first board meeting of the month, and the first reading for this particular policy was the 6th of February. And so therefore the board packet and everything that's on the agenda came out on the 1st of February. So it was out there for almost 3 weeks before we finalized it last Tuesday, or this past Tuesday.
And it doesn't sound as though, Matt, that the school board, the Board of Trustees staff, that you were trying to conceal this particular policy change. And as you just described, a consent agenda is actually very common. Many elected boards use the consent agenda as just a way, as you said, to consolidate business. It probably did not anticipate that it would generate this much concern. It's a sensitive topic. And if we go right to section J regarding students, we should mention that there was a policy in place dated back to 2008. So it's not as though, this is a brand new policy. It is rather lengthy in response to something in particular, which we can get to, Matt. But it's not the first time the school district has had a policy like this.
No, you're correct. And when it comes to memorials and some other things, yes, there were other policies that did deal with this. We have 2 policies that are very similar. One is policy JGH, and that one is the new one. That's the student welfare, death of a student or staff. About a year ago, maybe July, I think actually it was July 18, we passed policy JGG, which was student welfare, suicide prevention. This was specific about how the district is going to handle those issues that come up with suicide, whether it be an attempted suicide, whether it be a suicide itself. What support we can give, how we're going to talk about it as a district and in the schools, so that we have the ability for our students, our staff, our parents, our community to grieve, to understand that this is what happens. While with that said, this dealt specifically with suicide. We didn't have a policy that treated all deaths equally. Any sudden death is tragic, especially when we're talking about our students. It is tragic, and we needed to make sure that we are treating all deaths equally. And that's what we heard from our community when we were discussing JGG. Suicide is a death. It shouldn't have a stigma to it. And we, as the district, agree it shouldn't have a stigma to it. We do want to talk about it. Regardless of what the form of death occurred takes, it's also important, though, that it's not something that should be focused on for lengths of time, for an extended period of time. And so we do have temporary memorials that are available. This is not a memorial, though, that is going to stay up all school year, regardless of the form of death.
Matt McCarty is president of the Elko County School Board of Trustees, again, talking about this, what led up to this policy. Now, we should mention that there was a catalyst, in fact, Matt, that you're talking about, so we can illustrate this issue for someone listening and not understanding why it's become an issue. Fairly recently, a student died in an accident, an automobile accident, vehicle accident. Within the next day, another student died by suicide. These were two different campuses, but they were high school students. Their deaths were handled differently, both publicly and within the campus community. And so that did serve as somewhat of a catalyst for this policy, correct?
It did. It did to a degree, yes. It certainly changed more of the existing policy JGH with suicide, but it also did say we need to make sure that we're addressing this. And you're right, it happened 2 days apart. Two different campuses, two completely different students. And it was handled two different ways. I believe that it was handled by the administrations of each school in the way that they conducted themselves appropriately, properly with what they were given. What the community may not have known is that in some cases, families don't want to share their grief or share specifics or discuss this in an open manner. In this case, we had one family that was very supportive of the school's efforts and the students' efforts, and so it seemed that student's life had more meaning or value or was more celebrated than the student whose family said, "Thank you, but this is private, and we're handling this privately." And so it made the appearance that because of the nature of the deaths, that one was hidden or shamed or swept under the rug, and the other was not. It's also difficult because there are students who have circles of friends that are larger or smaller than others. That also impacts things when there are comparisons. There shouldn't be comparisons with death. There should be a respect for all, all deaths. This case, there were comparisons, and there were unfair comparisons. There were frustrations, and I believe our administration did what they could given the policies and given the procedures that they had. We immediately recognized we needed to make some changes. So that is part of that catalyst. I don't know that was the only reason as to why policy JGH, staff and student death, was created, but it certainly led to that. We need to do something more quickly.
So Matt, can you tell us if JGH, this new policy, does it mimic, or was it taken from another existing policy, or how was it drafted?
Absolutely. So the policy itself, our policies, there's not just somebody in a dark room that's writing these policies and then, slips them through a hole in the wall and says, "Here, you should put this out." Our policies have people that we bring together to talk about it. If it's an educational policy, then it's going to be very heavy with an educational background of the people that are present. For this particular policy, it was created by a committee that included district leadership, which would be people at central office. It was with site leadership as well. So some of our principals, we call them site administrators as well. It also had state mental health professionals. So we're talking state level in the state government helping us with this. Social workers, our school resource officer team was involved. We had a school psychologist and a school psych expert that was there to help with this. This was a well-rounded committee, and there were two things that we wanted to really look at. First, we wanted to make sure that there were no restrictions on grieving on an individual or collective basis from our stakeholders. However, we wanted to define what the capacity of the district was, and that reflects to the school as well. What is the capacity of the school and the district when it came to grieving? Those restricted capacities were not to engage in memorials. So we were simply saying the school itself, the administration, the teachers, the school district are not going to conduct a memorial. We're not going to have Mr. Jones in room 34 say, this was my favorite student and let's get together and have a memorial. Mr. Jones can participate in a memorial, certainly, but not one that he's going to organize, not one that the school is going to organize. The students, the staff, the parents, the community could grieve as they need to. It's just not coming from a school, from the school side. And the second part was a common thread to make sure to strive to treat all deaths equally. And so with this, these experts in the realm of education and mental health, they pulled from model policies and toolkits across the nation and across other districts, other agencies, to find this language. It's not, we didn't recreate the wheel with this. And so these experts came together to draft this policy, looking through the lens of those two conditions. What's the capacity of the school and the district, and how do we treat each death equally with respect?
Matt McCarty is our guest today as we are talking about the school district policy that was adopted in a second reading during Tuesday's regular school board meeting. The question is to Matt, does JGG override, does JGH, the new policy, does it override JGG, or does that policy regarding suicide specifically still exist?
So they both exist. And if there is a conflict between policy, and I don't believe there is in reading through them more recently, 3 weeks ago, I don't see that there's necessarily a conflict, but if there happens to be a conflict, if the death is by suicide, then policy JGG, which is our suicide prevention policy, takes precedent. That they're on equal footing unless there's a conflict and that conflict deals with a death by suicide.
And so a lot of what we've seen and heard is being generated on social media. People are just extracting certain bits of information from either both these policies, or they're completely ignoring the suicide prevention policy, Matt. And the reason, again, for this program is just to try to help people understand that this is a very serious issue, but that the school board of trustees was not trying to, as you pointed out, restrict grieving, and certainly not trying to encourage there be differences between one type of death and another, which seems to be creating the confusion and the anger. There's some anger in the community.
Absolutely. I think there is some anger, and I'm not one to say you shouldn't be angry. But when anger is based on a misunderstanding, then absolutely, I want to try to resolve that. I want to try to help stop the misunderstanding and spread understanding. Because unfortunately, as you mentioned, there are people who are taking very specific portions of the policy out of policy and putting it there. In policy JGH, section 7, subsection D does say events. School organized dedications, tributes, or memorials to students will not be allowed at athletic competitions, school dances, graduation, or other extracurricular events. That portion seems to have created a lot of discussion and a lot of anger from some people. And I understand if they're not reading the whole thing, how that happens. It's school organized. And some people have said, well, the students are school. You're right. But it doesn't say student led. It says school. We are the school district. Those are the parameters in which we're working under. So in this policy, school organized means the administration of that school. The administration of that school is not going to stop a football game to say, at this time, everyone, we are going to take a moment of silence. That's not what we're going to be doing. However, if school students want to do something else, this doesn't stop that. We have a meeting today with the people that crafted this policy. I've been invited to come in as well to address some questions that one of our community members sent in. I'm thankful that community member sent in the question because that allows us the opportunity to respond. I can't keep up with social media. Our communication specialist can't keep up with the social media. It posts and then it jumps to this post and then it goes like wildfire. We can't address it all. But with an email and direct questions, we can address this. And so I'm not going to speculate what the committee is going to say. I'm not going to answer because the board will come back and review this if need be. I'm waiting to see how these are answered to be able to then come back out if needed and say, here are the circumstances in which memorials are going to be allowed. A chair placed on graduation, a celebration at a yard line, whatever it may be, an entry into the yearbook, because that was another part that was also very, there was a lot of conflicting emotion and discussion on the yearbooks as well. And I want to address that too. But to the events side of things, it's the school itself that is not going to say, this is how we're going to do it.
And so, Matt, that is one of the points of the ordinance, or I should say the policy, that I did have highlighted too regarding yearbooks, because for a lot of people, yearbooks are very personal and it's an expression, and they're allowed to purchase advertising, for example, in the yearbooks. So it does state, there are two sentences under Section E. Yearbooks may not contain memorial pages dedicated to a single student or staff who's died. Any questions about yearbook memorials should be discussed with the school principal as soon as possible. So are you suggesting that students themselves could put information in their yearbooks, or is this?
I'm reading this as there's not going to be a page for student A. Because if student B's family says, no, I don't want that in there, we need to respect student B's family's wishes, and that we need to respect that. But what ends up happening is, again, there are then comparisons when it's single, when one person is singled out, positively or negatively. And there are people that say, well, so I'm getting punished because this person doesn't want, this person wants to be private. My family's getting punished. My loved one's getting punished because this person's wanting to be private. We're not trying to punish anyone, but we are saying that families grieve differently and there will be comparisons. We don't have a way to say, here's why student B isn't in there. And so when somebody says, oh, so you don't like student B, but you like student A, that's not at all what it's about. So we'll have a more clear answer on that as to if students could purchase something or anything else like that. But there's also the reason that it says, talk to the principal. Mm-hmm. And we want to make sure that folks know, it doesn't say absolutely not. It says if you would like a memorial in a yearbook, talk to the principal and talk to them as soon as possible, because there are deadlines on the yearbooks. And I want to make sure to be very clear on this. I've talked today about the different ways that people grieve. It's an individual process. It is a subjective process. I am not in a position to judge whether one person's way of grieving is any better or worse than a second person's way of grieving. And if we have a policy that is subjective, that causes problems down the line. We need an objective policy. We need a policy that says this is what we are doing or this is what we're not doing. We have more than 20 different administrators. We have a year's span of what things can happen, and years are compared against other years. Administrators in one area may treat something different than an administrator in another area, and again, that causes comparisons. It shouldn't cause comparisons. Both administrators should know what they can do and what they can't do so that the families are respected appropriately. And that's only if it's in two different schools. What if it's 2 different years at the same school and the administrator has changed? There's that reality of we want all deaths to be treated with respect and treated equally. It can't be done if the way to treat it is subjective.
Thank you, Matt, for explaining all of these different reasons, what went into crafting the policy, certainly. And as you just described, I think for us, the fact is that it needs to be as uniform as possible. And it sounds as though the policy was drafted in response to some actual concerns and things that were brought forward from not only the community, but the campuses because of the concerns of the way that different student deaths had been treated in the past.
Absolutely. And we want to be careful in that. I also want to say specifically that because we received this question, and this is a question I can answer, are existing memorials that have been, permanent memorials, are those to be removed? The board, during the early February meeting, the February 6th meeting, I think it was, the board specifically said, we don't want this to impact existing memorials. And language was changed. It's in the policy that says this is not restrictive of the district, that says that it necessitates the removal of existing memorials. So I want to make sure that it's very clear on that as well.
There were so many things that were different. Student deaths were rare, frankly, probably for different generations of people listening. They weren't made as public, and people didn't attach themselves in such a way that social media has created, Matt. So that's definitely a different environment. And sadly, the suicide was not the issue that it is. And
Yes.
I guess in closing, I would just ask, do you think that the Elko County School Board of Trustees acknowledges and is responding to student death by suicide?
Yes. We have approved an entire policy on suicide prevention. The school district has 4 pillars, one of which is student wellness, student and staff wellness. Part of that is suicide, mental health. We have entered into an agreement with the Cook Center, and I may have gotten that wrong, I apologize, but we are providing seminars on mental health. We are not burying this. We are not ashamed to talk about suicide. We don't want to create suicide ideation. We don't want suicide contagion. And earlier today I was told suicide contagion from the CDC is listed at 5% of all suicides. I don't have that stat. It was told to me, and that may be so. In Elko County, we have a mental health vacuum when it comes to treatment options. I don't think that we're representative of the CDC's 5% because we don't have the tools that everyone that other areas of the country do. And so because of that, we take this very seriously. It's a sensitive, serious topic. And that's also why I was happy. I shouldn't say happy. That's why I felt that the board did the right thing by passing this policy when they did. My day job is with the Elko Senior Center. Sorry. We just lost one of our senior members. She was days away from getting the help she needed. Literally days away. And something tragic happened. I would have felt terrible if, Lord forbid, one of our students had passed, regardless of way in which they passed, and we didn't have a policy to help our staff know how to process that. There is always time to change this. We encourage people to come and visit with us. Our next meeting is on March 5th. If this is still something that you are not understanding, and we will be presenting and publishing some more answers directly to the questions that have been posed, and if that still isn't enough and you want to see changes, yes, let us know. That's why we have public comment. But I also encourage people, we've given 2 extra weeks to review any of these policies. I believe this is more than other boards have given from the Board of Trustees. We're giving 2 extra weeks for the public to review these policies. Please review the policies, look them over, come to us before we've passed it as the second reading. That's why we've done it. That's why we have these 2 readings now, so that the public can get engaged and involved. Get engaged and involved directly with us, not on social media and from the sidelines and from the shadows. Come to us, please. We can't be more transparent than what we are being. And when there's a misunderstanding, or if you think you're not getting it right, understanding it right, or if your first reaction is anger, then there probably is misunderstanding. Because why on God's green earth would the school board of trustees, the ones that you've elected, why would we pass a policy designed to make you angry? Just ask yourself that. And so instead of spitting vitriol on a social media platform, contact us. It may take some time. My phone number is out there all over the community. Text me. Hey, can you give me a call? I've got some concerns on this. I don't do social media very well, but I've had people contact me on the Messenger, Facebook Messenger. And I've said, yep, here's my number, call me. It's on my email. Email me at the school board and I will respond. It may take me some time. Email is not my best communication method either. But if you are angry, if you are confused, let us know, because there's probably a misunderstanding. That doesn't mean that we haven't overlooked something. That's why we just got finished changing on Tuesday's meeting. We changed policy JGG because there were some things that we needed to update. So please, community, we are trying to earn your trust back. We need you to give us a little bit of trust and understand that we are not doing anything to purposefully hurt you or your students or our community. We're not doing this to confuse you. We're not doing this to anger you. Let us know.
Matt. Oh, thank you, Matt, so much. And do know that we are planning a follow-up to this conversation. Again, we did invite, but it was very short notice. We invited at least one of the representatives from the agency concerned, wanting more input on the policy. And I'm positive that that person will come at a time that's more convenient, or once they've had some time to discuss this policy in detail, Matt. And as you just said, you welcome that. And it's important to note that that open, direct, and honest talk about suicide is making a difference in our community. And we understand the school district has been involved in that, and that there are many trainings available. Safe Talk is an important training that anyone in the community can take, and it's about a 2-hour training, and it will give you the tools to help educate your family, your workplace, anyone that you may encounter that is troubled and that you need to help with that. And if anyone listening needs immediate help, if you're in a crisis, call 988. That is a 24-hour lifeline to help, and it will get you help locally, anywhere you are. So,
absolutely.
Matt, thank you. To be continued.
Yes, and thank you for clearing the schedule to allow us to try to address these misunderstandings in the community, and to say we are trying to get to a more direct answer.
Thank you, Matt. I could not have said it better. And thank you so much for being on this program. And thank you, listeners, for joining us. We can certainly encourage you to share this program. It's available in archive at elkoradio.com. It's played back from 5:30 to 6, but please do get the information that you need to make an informed decision or to become more involved in this issue and to make the difference that you think would be most effective. So thank
Absolutely.
you, Matt.
Thank you.
Thank you, listeners, for joining us for Elko Live today here on KELK.